Hi, it's Christina with the Sisyphean Journal. I'm watching a video by the Christian Darton Report, new Joe Rogan, The Truth on the Sound of Freedom. And they talk about the fact that one of the ways that children and adults get rescued from sex traffickers is people noticing and alerting local law enforcement so they can take some action. Now, ask yourself this. What happens when a victim of sex trafficking gets an STD? Laura Lederer, a leader in the fight against human trafficking, looked into that questions and other related questions regarding how sex trafficking victims come into contact with healthcare providers. What she and her co-author Christopher Wetzel found was published in Health Consequences of Sex Trafficking and Their Implications for Identifying Victims in Healthcare Facilities, published in the Winter 2014 Annals of Health Law, and I will provide a link to it below. Lederer and Wetzel found, not surprisingly, that when sex trafficking victims got sick or injured or were put on birth control or got pregnant, their pimps take them to healthcare facilities. During their time of sexual slavery, nearly 88% of trafficking victims are taken to a medical facility of some sort. And one medical provider stood out above all the others, and I'm going to quote from the report. Survivors also had significant contact with clinical treatment facilities, most commonly Planned Parenthood clinics, which more than a quarter of survivors, 29.6%, visited. Well, actually 29.6% rounds easily up to 30, which is far closer to a third, which is 33.3, than to a quarter, which is 25. That is an astonishing number. Nearly 1/3 of sex trafficking victims pass through the doors of a Planned Parenthood. Now, at first glance, this might seem like good news, right? If Planned Parenthood workers are properly trained, nearly 1/3 of sex trafficking victims would come into contact with dedicated people trained to identify them and offer them help in escaping from trafficking. And this would be amazing. But what will Planned Parenthood actually do? Let's look at the experience of one Planned Parenthood employee who saw for herself how the organization tackled the issue of staff spotting possible sex trafficking. Ramona Trevino was working as a manager at a Planned Parenthood in Texas when the group Live Action was releasing various undercover videos showing Planned Parenthood workers engaging in questionable or even illegal practices. "I just blew it off," Ramona said of the videos. "I thought, this is ridiculous. We don't have anything to hide, so why are we so concerned about these undercover investigations? If you have nothing to hide, then you have nothing to fear, right?" But Ramona continued, "In the beginning of 2011, another undercover investigation came out exposing Planned Parenthood workers aiding and abetting underage sex trafficking." And now I'm going to quote from a video, an interview with her, and I will provide a link to the interview below so you can watch it in its entirety. Planned Parenthood Federation of America went out publicly saying they would retrain all of their staff on how they reported abuse. When we were called into this meeting, I went in really believing that Planned Parenthood could redeem themselves. They're going to prove that they really do care about women, and this is something that really concerns them. I walk into the room, it's dark, we sign in, and there's a projector screen pulled down, and they begin to play all of the previous undercover investigations that had been put out about Planned Parenthood. And I became very perplexed. I thought, what's going on here? Are we showing these things because they're showing us what not to do? The things that are wrong, so we don't do these things? And so I raised my hand and said, I'm confused. When are we actually going to begin the retraining? What can I do as a manager to take this information back to my staff and enforce policies and procedures that would help protect women who are experiencing either sex trafficking or abuse, sexual abuse in any way? Because that's a difficult subject to talk about if you ever have a patient who comes in to express that. And so I really wanted to know how to deal with that. And she immediately shot me down. She said, "We're not here to talk about that, Ramona. We're here to teach you how to identify if you're being videotaped or recorded or entrapped in any way." At that moment, Ramona said, my heart just sunk. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I couldn't believe that we were actually there to train on how to identify if we're being recorded. Again, it goes back to why. Do we have something to hide? Why is this an issue for us? That experience for me left me so disgusted that I couldn't see how Planned Parenthood could ever redeem themselves after that. In their paper, Lederer and Wetzel explore what Planned Parenthood and other healthcare providers could do in order to help protect and rescue sex trafficking victims and to alert authorities who could bring the perpetrators to justice. But sadly, it doesn't seem as if Planned Parenthood has any interest in moving in that direction. It's not the pimps and pedophiles that view Planned Parenthood as problematic. And it's not the pimps and pedophiles that Planned Parenthood sees as problematic. It's the investigators showing what's going on behind closed doors. And as we're seeing from the response to the Sound of Freedom, what we are seeing is what Planned Parenthood's media stooges think of this. And that's don't ask, don't tell.